as we have seen the other day, we can say that both males and females are marrying later than they used to be maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or more so. So the share, for example, as we have seen this table last week, this is for males, right? This is for males. And the share, the majority, used to be the people who were in the late 20s for the first marriage, right, in 2000. But this has shrinked. And then it kind of replaced by the people who are in the early 30s. You can say that males are marrying later than they used to be, right? Well, same can be said for the females as well, right? Females. You can see that here in 2000, of course, the majority was the late 20s, but the share of the early 20s were quite significant, but it has shrinked very much. And then now it's people who were in the 20s, late 20s, and early 30s. So people are getting married late, which has a lot of implications, right? A lot of sociological implications. They will be marrying later, so they will have less children, it's very likely, right? And which means that maybe they would, the children would be a difficult issue for the couples, because as we have learned so far, nowadays both males and females, they put more emphasis on their career, their work. It's more likely that the females are also being employed. So that means that they get married late, and then they would have to think about, how many children should we have? And then it's likely that they might have one, and then they decide, well, because my career is very important, the females will say, well, let's stop here and then continue with the work. And so what happens? There's very low fertility, and this child would become a kind of like a very important resource very important treasure for the family, and then the family will invest a lot, and then it involves other issues later on. Okay, more concretely, the number. According to the recent data published by the Bureau of Statistics, the average age of first marriage for male and female, males is 31.8 years old. Okay, so if you are 26 years old now, maybe you probably will have to wait until, wait for about 5-6 more years, right? Females, 28.9. It's like quite, according to maybe your parents' generation, they would think that 28, 29 years old is quite old. But it's the reality, right? Because you have to find a job, you have to have good education, often graduate school, right? And then get a job and make some basic maybe establishment before you go on with the marriage. Well, in longer term, this is more kind of, this shows more radical change of the past 50 years. In 1960, males, the average age of the first marriage, or average age of marriage actually, was slightly over 25 years old. So maybe 25 years old, like you, some people might graduate from college, right? I know that some of you are over 25, well, right? Yeah, so, and then females 21.6, very young. So as I mentioned earlier, the other week, most females didn't go to college. After high school, they work a little bit, or they would kind of prepare to be a good housewife or good mother and so on, then they would get married. So 21.6, quite young, but the radical change has taken place. Especially, the most important of this has been the the high college attendance rate of the females. So almost 80% of both males and females attend college. So 4 years of education after you graduate from high school, right? And then you get a job. So this continued to have an effect on this issue of first marriage, age of first marriage. 1970, 27.1 for males and 23.3 for females. 1980, 27. So it continued to grow, right? And then finally, by 2010, males over 30, and females almost 30. Okay. When I see these numbers, one thing always strikes me is that why there is such a age gap between male and females, even though this both males and females to get married later than they used to, but still there is some age gap. As of 2010, you have maybe almost 2 years difference, right? 2 years difference between males and females. And why? Do you have this kind of like age gap between male and females in Austria? Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay, maybe students in China can also hear. In Austria?
I'm not sure, but there's a saying that 4 years difference is good between men and women. Yeah, but not only in Austria. I have friends from Australia as well who say that. So I guess I don't know, maybe it's a common thing. I don't know.
So my question is more kind of general question. I mean, if there is such kind of like a culture or maybe saying that the older male, not very old, but maybe 2, 3, 4 years old difference in favor of like male being older, is it more kind of global culture or in the Philippines, do you, or Canada, or?
I'm not very sure, but what I do know of, like traditionally, usually it's preferred that the male is older than the female. Yeah, mainly because like traditionally speaking, the male is thought to be like the head of the household, and therefore, and in terms of like wisdom and leadership, usually age is what. Yeah.
I don't have the comparative data, but I would like to know. What about in China? Yo, Nam, would you say China in Korea, Chinese student in Korea? Yeah.
I think we do have this gap in China. The legal marriage of the female and male are different. Yeah, the male can get married since 22, and the female since 20. And I think there are some biological things as well. I think the female's body grows earlier than male's, 2 years, right? Earlier 2 years, right? Yes, that's true. Yeah, biologically and legally, I think. Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's.
I ask this question because when I was teaching this class to only Korean students, I used to explain this by the military service. I had the hypothesis that maybe it's because the males have to serve 3 years or actually it used to be 3 years, now it's like 2 years. So there's kind of like social difference in terms of whether one gender serves military service and so on. But I kind of realized that it's not just Korea which shows this kind of like age gap, even though I do not have the exact data for this for other countries. I would like to know, but according to what Kwan-nam said, probably similar, even legal. That really reminds me of if you have like a computer, can you like search? I think the legal age for Korea is both male and female same, and if you are over 18, 사회문화 책에 나오지 않나요? When is legal? When is the age? What is the age that Korean male and females can marry? Is it 20 or 18? 18. Okay, so 18. But they're the same, right? Male and female, identical. Yes. Whereas in China, he told me that it's 22 for the males and 20 for the females, which kind of assumes that male kind of like older than the females. I don't know. I think this is something that we need some comparative interpretation, because I was wrong in the past when I said that. I guess the reason that Korean males are older than females at the time of marriage was because of military service. But that sounded all right before I realized that this might be found in other part of the world. So I do not have like full, complete explanation for this age difference. But I would love to hear if you like non-Korean student or international students who might have better information about your own countries. Is there? What about Scotland?
Yeah, I just double checked.
16, yes.
Yeah,
Both male.
yeah, both males and females, which is really surprising because that, to me, is still a child. 16 seems very young. But yeah, me and Tilo were just saying, I think possibly, well, for me, it kind of seems natural for the male to be older. Most relationships I know, the male is a few years older. I think maturity gap is one of the first things. Yeah. yeah, a few of those factors. And also I think women tend to look for, if they're looking for a certain type of relationship, they may look for someone who's going to take really good care of them. And that might be from someone who's a little bit older. Might be a factor. Yeah, maybe more established, maybe has been in their job longer, can like provide a more secure relationship. Yeah, I was a bit hesitant to say that because I didn't want to imply that like women are looking for powerful men, but I think ultimately that could contribute.
In Germany, you can basically marry when you're 16, but you can just marry with someone who is over 18, and just if your parents give their okay. So usually if you're 18.
But what about in reality? I mean, what would you say that, do you think that there is kind of age gap when they actually get married in terms of like national statistics?
I don't have any data, but I would guess the same probably, because I totally agree what Mora said. So
this is not really just Korean phenomenon, right? Looks like this kind of like a global phenomenon. I think probably I need to do some more research before I give a kind of sociological explanation. I guess my previous explanation of this data, which was like based on military service, can be falsified by looking at other countries if they do have similar pattern in terms of the age difference between male and females. That is, males older than the females. Right? Okay, so but anyway, this trend has been going on. But also, if you take a closer look, the age gap has been declining actually. in 1960, it was almost 4 years old. Now it's maybe less than 3 years old. So even though it's not very big, but still you see this age gap has been declining. And so all kind of hypothetical explanation is possible. Maybe males are getting more mature, I don't know, or maybe because of the military service, shortening of the military service, that could be a possibility. And I think even though this might not be statistically significant, you see or you hear that some older women actually getting married with younger men. So this used to be maybe a very big taboo if it was 1960s and 70s. But nowadays you see that maybe your friends or your relatives, older females getting married with younger male. So this kind of stereotype of the past, which is like older male or younger female marrying older male, has been kind of loosened up, I think. So like nowadays more flexible, if you will. Okay, but still, in terms of like this average, there is a gap, but the gap has been kind of decreasing over the past 50 years. Oh yeah, actually, I did have the data. Yeah. Okay, so I was stupid. Yeah, asking for your information, right? Yeah, actually, yeah, I did go over this about an hour ago, but I forgot. Yeah. So you see this kind of global trend, right? Global trend that is almost same globally. So there goes my theory. My theory is just invalid, the military hypothesis, right? Switzerland. Age of first marriage, which is blue dot in the middle, right? Average age, that is Switzerland, almost 34 years old, right? At the time of first marriage. Switzerland, Sweden, Iceland, Denmark, Norway, these are the countries which have high age, older when they get married, whereas countries like Romania, Latvia, Mexico, Poland, Lithuania, they marry very young, at 25, 26 years old. Okay, and also you see the red dot is man, and green dot is women. So there is some age gap. Probably, let's see, about 3.5, right? 3.5 year difference between male and female. So looks like this is kind of maybe a very general, very universal phenomenon. So my hypothesis of military hypothesis is just unsupported. Okay, it's statistically it's not a very supportive hypothesis. Still. What would be the explanation? Biological or something like that? Could be. Yeah? It's difficult to really pinpoint, but I think you can see this general trend in all over the world. Well, age of second marriage. Well, this is something new, a very new concept in Korea, because you used to say that the marriage is marriage, right? You wouldn't say first marriage or second marriage or third marriage. Because once you're married, your spouse would be your permanent partner for the rest of your life. So when you have a wedding, right, and there will be a kind of presider of the wedding, and he would give a kind of very eloquent speech to the bride and bridegroom and also to the guest, and saying that this couple will live together forever until the death separates them, or in Korean they would live together. 검은 머리 팥불이 되도록, okay, which means 검은 머리 팥불이 되도록, which means your dark hair becomes like the hair of the green onion, which is quite white, right? So 검은 머리 팥불이 되도록. There is a song 검은 머리 파뿌리 대 그렇죠? Yeah, so, yeah, anyway, so the marriage was something that's very sacred and should go on for life, you know, for the rest of one's life. But this began to change over the past maybe 30 years, and so there's this important phenomenon of divorce. Okay, so if you want to get second chance or second marriage, you have to get divorced, right? So, which means that this age of second marriage shows that there has been many cases of divorce, which made this divorces available in the second marriage market, if you will, right? Second marriage market. People are much older than they used to, even for the second marriage. In 2000, maybe the average age was around 40. Now it's like 43, something like that. Still, this trend continues. Older males marrying younger females, or younger females marrying older males. From your perspective, maybe 41 is not very young, but maybe from 46-year-old male, 41 is quite young, right? And I think it's quite interesting, especially compare this with the previous first marriage. Here it was less than 3 years difference between male and females, right? For the first marriage, less than 3-year difference. Whereas for the second marriage, it's about 4.5-year difference. That is, the age gap is much bigger. So I guess as for the second marriage, like maybe older males seek much younger females, or maybe younger females want much older, mature males, which means that maybe there's all kind of social resource or whatever that has been involved, much more so than the first marriage. Okay, so, and then you also see this kind of general trend of increase of the second marriage, I guess. So people, maybe if it was in the 1960s and 70s, you get divorced, and then you would, if you were like 45 years old or 50 years old, you said, well, you know, it's like they wouldn't really consider second marriage. But nowadays, even when you're quite old, 50, 60, they say, well, you know, I have a second life. I have a long way to go before I die, for example, because life expectancy has increased a lot, and so on. So they do look for a second chance and to find a partner and get married. Okay. Well, this is some different issue. So we do get married later, and we do get married for second marriage. And another important, very important phenomenon today in Korea has been the increase, very rapid increase of international marriages. I think this is an issue that you can also ask to Professor Yoon In-jin next week when he gives a lecture on multicultural society, and he is the expert, I think, in Korea about foreign international marriages and foreign workers and so on. So please be prepared to ask some questions. And I do have a handout for his lecture. He has given material that he expects you to read before you come to the class. But anyway, so what you see is that there's been a sharp increase of international marriages. Then if you go back, this data only shows 2000, as early as 2000. But if you go back further to the 1990s and 1980s, the number was even lower. It's a phenomenon, international marriage is a phenomenon that began to draw attention since late 1980s. Okay, so 1980s, when Korean society become more maybe internationalized, more globalized, and the economy getting bigger and open and so on. the blue line is the trend of marriage between Korean male and foreign females. Okay, and the red, pink or red, or Korean females marrying foreign males. You can see that it's dominantly Korean male marrying foreign females. Right? This is a very important phenomenon, and I think it shows a lot of, it raises a lot of issues, As of in 2010, the number of international marriage between Korean male and international or foreign female was more than 26,000. Whereas in 2000 it was about 7,000 cases. So over the past 10 years, the number has really skyrocketed. It's really has increased by leaps and bounds, right? Whereas the Korean female marrying foreign female has increased over the past 10 years, but relatively at a slower pace. Okay. And if you, let me just throw a question. If you go back another 10, 20 years, what would have been the pattern of international marriage, say in 1980? If you go back 20 years further from 2000, you can guess, right? You can guess. And I will write it down. I'll draw. Can I? Okay. Okay, more sophisticated picture would be. Yeah, this is fun, yeah. Okay, yes, it was the other way. Actually, it was number one, of course, the number of international marriages was much smaller. It was much fewer, right? Smaller. Number two, it was mostly international of the foreign males marrying Korean females. Foreign males from where? In 1980, let's say. In 1980, I said foreign males marrying Korean female. And foreign males from which country in the world? Which country? Yes, it was dominantly the US. So-called GIs, a lot of GIs, and American soldiers based in Korea. They were the main partner of Korean females. And there was some social stigma in Korean society. But anyway, so international marriage was not very popular, and among the international marriage, it was the U.S. males marrying Korean females. And then it kind of the trend began to change in the 1990s and in the 2000s. Now it's like Korean males marrying international or foreign females. Okay, foreign females from which country now? U.S.? No. Okay. Where? Vietnam? Yes. Okay. And other? Yeah, there are Chinese actually. China. Okay. Yes. So Korean males marrying foreign females. You can see at the very top, blue line is China, females from China. And number 2 is Vietnam. Number 3, the Philippines and Cambodia. These are the 4 countries. The origin in terms of origins of brides. It has been dominantly Chinese or Korean Chinese, 조선족, a lot of Korean Chinese, because the language is very important, and many Korean Chinese from China actually have found their spouse in Korea, and a lot of people actually came to Korea for work and so on. It was during the 2000 this trend change began to take place, and then in recent years it's the Vietnam, and it's like Southeast Asian countries from Vietnam, Philippines, and Cambodia, and and probably you might have heard. I mean, it's a very delicate issue, and some of the issues are not very. It's not something that I'm not very proud of. That is, there were a lot of like brutal cases of like family violence and so on, and because it is. I mean, there are. I guess it's probably fair to say that there are some quite a significant cases of couples where they have happy marriage and happy family and so on, but at the same time there are some many cases of like very unhappy family relationship because of many things, because maybe cultural difference, and in many cases this has been arranged by so-called marriage agents, so it's arrangement companies, and very hurriedly, because I guess many Korean males who are not able to find their spouse, especially the rural community. About 40% of the marriage taking place in the rural community has been international marriage, and because of this difficulty, economic difficulty, and social difficulties of rural society, the farmers had very difficult time in finding a spouse. So they get old, 30, 40, 45, even 50. But they still want to get married and have like, because the family is much more emphasized in the rural community, and so they were seeking spouse, but within Korea it was not possible. And so-called matchmaking companies, these marriage agents have been intervening, and have arranged marriage with brides, females, often very young females who are in maybe early 20s and early mid 20s, and then they get married. They get married in a very hurried way. Males will visit maybe Vietnam for 3-4 days, and then meet maybe a lot of number of young females, and then choose, if you will, choose one female, and then invite her to Korea, and then get married, and so on. So it's not really kind of like a well thought process. And of course, on the other side, in many Southeast Asian countries, many females think this as kind of like opportunity for upward mobility. I have talked to some Vietnamese scholars in Australia when I was staying there for my sabbatical, and he told me that there are certain area in Mekong River area where a lot of very poor females live, the farmer daughters of the females, of the farmers, and then on the one hand, it's kind of very old culture that they would marry like maybe people from other part, not just Korea, but other parts of the world. So actually, the Japanese and then Taiwanese, it's kind of like strange that this kind of trend has been going on earlier in Japan and then Taiwan and then Korea, marrying these poor females in Southeast Asia, and these females, often very young females, seeking this as kind of like opportunity for them to move out of the poverty in their area. But this kind of international context of poverty is involved. And then, so it was the marriage itself is very commercialized, if you will, because it's arranged by the company, and then the male should provide a certain amount of money, and then they don't really know each other, and then many young females have this very kind of like unrealizable dream. They think that every Korean male is very affluent, as they have seen on the TV, like drama, Korean Hallyu, actually, this Korean cultural wave, and they would think that I go to Korea, it would be like very nice, like place, and they would go to nice restaurants and listen to nice music, drive a nice car, and so on. But the reality is very different, and then so, of course, the age gap, cultural gap, and the reality of this marriage life, all this, and a difference of language and so on, a different culture. So this got into a serious problem at the family level. So of course, some males have been treating their wives very badly, and there were a number of cases of this kind of issues. So on the one hand, this kind of trend has been going on. So there are some happy families, and especially I hear that some rural community has become very vitalized because these farmers were able to find their spouses and have children, and the whole community began to revive because they have new member. There has been super aging process going on because there was no children, but suddenly they get married, so maybe 40% of the whole village, they have this new wives from brides from Southeast Asia. So this community become, in terms of population, in terms of like whole atmosphere, it's really vitalized. So there's some happy stories, but at the same time, you also hear that because of this whole process of getting married, where you have many problems, which result in sometimes very tragic, result of like killing or brutally treating the female. So it's a very complicated issue, but the fact is that I think this is reality. That is, this has become very important part of Korean society. And what happens is that marriage means formation of the family. That is, they would have children, often more than 2 children. Actually, according to the statistics, the fertility rate is much higher than non-international marriage. Often in international marriage, they have 2 children, 3 children, and which means that this will be a very important part of Korean people. We call it multicultural family. Again, this is the specialty of the Professor Yunin Jin. And multicultural family will be affecting Korean society exponentially in the future because the number is increasing very well. So these children, these couples who got married in the 2000, late 1990s, 2000, and so on, they get married, they have children. They grow up, they attend primary school. Now many of them attend now middle school. And then you can see that maybe in the next 10 years, they will come out to the job market. They will become very important actor in Korean society. So how to live together, how to, because I think there is kind of, there has been kind of like myth in Korea. Yes. Hello. Okay. Welcome back again. There has been a myth of 단일 민족 or one race nation. We think that, well, Korea is a nation of one ethnic group, one race, 단일 민족, which is actually against the reality. Actually, I mean, Korean nation, the Korean people has been kind of like maybe not as culturally or racially diverse as like countries like the U.S. and so on, but over the years, in the past, there has been some like inflood of different ethnic groups from China and so on. So even though we might have maintained that we are 단일 민족, one race nation, the reality has been quite different. And nowadays, because of this international marriage, multicultural families, and very sharp increase of these so-called multicultural children, Korean society is becoming much more diverse, and this issue, kind of like challenging this myth of one race nation and opening up ourselves to this kind of new phenomenon is very important for the prosperity of Korean society. Yeah. So, but I guess there is still some prejudice against this, like South Asian people, and also especially to the multicultural families and the children. Some children are having great difficulty in living in Korean, especially. I heard from a farmer in Chungcheongdo area, a multicultural family, that the most difficult thing is that the children, the language communication skill is much less developed than like Korean family, because their mother's language is not as good as Korean mothers, and it's very important for the children for their language skill to develop. The communication with the mother is very important. So their language development is not as great as other kids, and then this kind of affect their academic achievement at school. So this kind of vicious circle. So and at the same time, often I think multiculturalism is something that the different cultures should be, I mentioned earlier in the class, should be equally respected. But often the main paradigm of Korean multiculturalism is how to like educate these non-Koreans or people from Southeast Asia, female from Southeast Asia, to quickly adjust to Korean culture, and often like eliminating this different culture from other parts of the world. To conclude, I think this is going to be very long-lasting and very important effect. And I think the future actually, because I have been have interest in the rural community, and I think I have written in an article saying that this will be very important asset for declining Korean rural community. These new people, young people coming in, having children, the schools can run, and the community can be revitalized. And so we should take advantage of this kind of opportunity with new curriculum, new ideas about who we are, and so on. Well, one obstacle for this multicultural family is our very strict legal arrangement about the marriage. In order to register a marriage, each man and woman should present family relation registration, 가족관계등록부, and marriage agreement form. And in family relation registration, you have these 3 different forms. So this compared to like many liberal Western countries, Korean society, in Korean society, government is very important actor. Government rules and laws and so on. And all kind of information about individuals are carefully collected and monitored and managed by the government. And in family relation registration, they have basic certificate which has information about birth, death, renaming, and so on. And family relation certificate, it shows information about parents, spouse, children. And marriage relation certificate, it has personal relation, spouse, and marriage, and so on. So family relation registration includes all kind of, these are 3 different forms within family relation registration, all kind of information about a person. Okay, so each and every Koreans have this kind of information very well managed by the government. And if someone is non-Korean, it's a very complicated issue. Especially the beginning of the new person starts with birth registration. Okay? When a baby is born in Korea, you have to have some forms to be actually born legally. Birth certificate. This is something that is also used, at least in the US. When you're born, the hospital issues birth certificate, and that's enough for you to prove that the baby is actually born. But that's not the case in Korea. There should be a form, a document, that the mother was Korean at the time of delivery of the baby, if the father was not Korean. And also marriage certificate of father and mother. So you have to be married. So if there was a baby in the US, I mean, I had my first child in the US when I was a graduate student. My baby was born, and the hospital had this a footprint of the baby, and like the baby girl name blah blah blah, and that shows that she was born. But I have to register in Korea. You have to register if the baby is actually born, right? And you need birth certificate if you get married in Korea, and then you have to still prove that the baby is legally born by 2 other forms. That is, marriage. You have to show that you're a couple. The baby's parents are legally married. So marriage certificate of father and mother. And if the father is not a Korean, because it follows this patrilineal. If the father is Korean, the baby is legally Korean, right? You have to show that the father is Korean, and then the problem is solved. If the father is not Korean, and then you have to show that the mother is Korean at the time of delivery of baby. Well, this is actually kind of legal improvement than what it used to be. That is, in the past, I think it was in the mid 2000s, you have to be, your father has to be Korean if you want to be Korean. The baby, if the baby wants to be Korean, the father should be Korean. But now they kind of realize that it's really a problem. They allowed that, well, maybe if you prove that your mother, the baby's mother is Korean, then we also will say that, well, the baby is also Korean. Okay, so it's a very, I mean, in terms of granting so-called nationality, or if in terms of legally accepting a baby to be Korean, the government requires all forms of documents kind of to try to legally provide the nationality. And this is quite challenging for many international couples. The whole, not only the cultural prejudice, but also in terms of legal aspect, international marriage has not been really very encouraged, even though nowadays, because of the very sharp increase of the international marriage, the whole legal arrangement has been becoming much more flexible and better, getting better to incorporate this change. Okay, well, let's take maybe 5-minute break before we talk about the issue of divorce, a different issue. Yeah. Okay, family consists of couple and children, right? And children. So happily married, but unfortunately, some couples do get divorced. And divorce rate is usually calculated by so-called crude divorce rate. That is, number of divorce cases per 1,000 people. 1,000 people, regardless of whether they're married or not. It's like total population, right? Out of total 1,000 people, how many cases of divorce are found? What's the divorce rate of Korea? It's not on this table. Yeah. Some people say that, well, if you read the newspaper, they say that like 50%, like in the newspaper they say one couple out of two couples, so like almost 50%, right? Well, that's not really the case. That's kind of like a statement made out of ignorance, I would say. Because usually if you just look at the data each year, you can get confused. That is, they say, well, yeah, in each year, well, there's about, I think, 300,000 marriages and 150,000 cases of divorce. If you just look at this number, you say, well, there are 300,000 and 150,000 divorce. So that means that maybe 50% of divorce. But that's not really, I mean, because marriage is something that happens each year annually by couples. Whereas marriage is cumulative, right? You have much more number of couples which have been married for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. So among this total marriage, divorce is quite minimal. Okay, so that's kind of like a very distorted statistical interpretation presented by the newspapers and journalists. More accurate number is measured by crude divorce rate, that is number of divorce cases per 1,000 people, okay? And according to this figure, crude divorce rate, that is number of divorce cases per 1,000 people, the US was the highest. And then this was followed by the UK and Denmark and so on. You do see some increase, in almost all countries, the divorce rate has been increasing. So divorce is something that has become quite widely popular. No, not popular, but it's taking place much more than it used to be in the past. And let me just ask one question. Among many sociological variables, what is the most important, in terms of statistics, important variable, social variable, that affects the increase of divorce rate? I mean, there are a number, maybe hundreds of different variables, so this is not really fair multiple choice question, right? There are a number of like all kind of variables, maybe income and the job opportunity, or whatever, and like blah blah blah. So so you're saying that
whether they have a child or not.
I think that's a very important variable. Probably the second important variable. But in general, I mean, divorce rate was very low in the past, right? Does that mean that they were all happy? Not really, not really. So there is like always a kind of depressant. There's kind of repressive pressure, which kind of plays as an obstacle to get divorce. It's usually the gender relationship is very important, and so it relates. My hint, it relates to female. So let's say number one, female's age. Number two, female's height. Number three, female's economic status, economic resource. Number four, female's last name. What would be the most? Okay, number three, yes, economic resource. If the female had a job, if female have income, if female has some money, capital, whatever, then the female do file a divorce. It means usually, because usually in general, I would say the marriage institution is kind of, had been kind of male-dominant institution in many societies. And even though there has been, if there was maybe discontent by the females, that is like, I don't like this marriage, this is quite, wrong, the relationship is unfair and so on. In many societies, it was very difficult the females get married because, if I get divorced or if I kicked out of this family, I won't be able to survive financially and so on. But increasing in modern times, females began to get better education and have jobs, have incomes, have money. And so if there is some problem with the relationship, they will say, well, no, this is not fair. I'm going to quit. And then I still can survive and have a second chance and happy life. So that's a very important factor. And so, that kind of shows that in terms of the divorce, the female status is very important. And ironically, you can say that maybe if there's higher divorce, then maybe the female's social status is getting higher. Well, as for Korea, well, unlike this newspaper saying that about 50% is a divorce case get divorced and it's really very bad. Well, not really. I mean, comparatively speaking, yes, the divorce rate has been increasing. Look at 1970, right? Very, very low, right? Less than one out of 1,000 population. Crude divorce rate is the line, not the bar. The bar is number of divorce cases. So in 1970, the crude divorce rate was much less than 1 out of 1,000 people. Now it's more than 2. That's lower than U.S., maybe probably similar to like France and Germany. Okay. So you can see that in general, since 1970, divorce rate has increased. So nowadays, if you will, the couples or the females feel unhappy with the marriage, they can actually can file divorce much freer than they did. At the same time, you can see that there was a peak in probably 2004. There was like a very high divorce rate in 2004, and then it kind of stabilized. When it's not as low as it was in 1970, but comparatively speaking, in recent years, divorce rate has been stabilized. Why is that? Well, it's not easy, but the expert think that it's because of the introduction of new institution of so-called think over period. I heard that this is kind of widely employed in other parts of the world, especially in many European countries. They have this think over period. So before you if you file a divorce to the court, the court would say, well, take a break. So if they have a child, they would say, well, take 3 months. So let's try to think over this, whether you really want to divorce and so on. So you should cool down. Or if there's no child, for 1 month, at least 1 month, think of some good things, good memories that you had and so on, right? And this was introduced in 2008, fully introduced. It was kind of experimented in the earlier years, and it was very effective from the government perspective. Well, yeah, look at this. This is working. So that's the experts are saying that, well, this actually has lowered the divorce rate, and when they have maybe 3 months break, and they think, well, yeah, for my child's sake, for my children, that maybe even though I don't like my husband or my wife, maybe it's better to live as a couple for the sake of children. And I don't know, and I think in general, Korean couples tend to think that children is a very important factor, and as she just told, the number of children is an important factor, and I think that is important factor. That is, in deciding whether one should get divorced or not, the couples would seriously consider, what might be the effect of my decision, individual decision, to my child, and still much less so than the past, but still there is some stigma, I think, for the divorced couple or the children of the divorced couple and so on. So the issue of divorce should also be thought in the context of the number of children, or whether the couple has the child or not. Let's just skip the age group. Average age of divorce. I think this is kind of natural. They get divorced because after certain years of marriage, and since they get married later, they would divorce later. There's nothing really special about this table. But I think this table is quite important and should be discussed in depth. Divorce and years lived together. That is on the left column, you see 0 to 4, that's years. How many years they live together? 0 to 4 years, 5 to 9 years, 10 to 14 years, 15 to 19 years, and then 20 plus years. At the time of divorce, how many years has the couple lived together? Okay. In 2000, among 119,000 cases of divorce, 35,000 were 0 to 4. And then followed by 5 to 9, 26.6, 22.4, 18.3 thousand cases of divorce. Okay? You follow it? In terms of percentage, 29.3%, 22.3%, 18.7%, blah, blah, blah. That is, the shorter that you have lived, the higher the chance of getting divorced. Okay? Whereas in 2010, out of 16,000 cases of divorce, 31.5 thousand were 0 to 4, 22, 5, 9, 18, 16, 27.8 thousand cases. In terms of percentage, 0 to 4 is 27.0%. The second, which one is the second? When is the most, if you will, dangerous period? That is 0 to 4, right? That's majority. Well, not I wouldn't say majority, but still significant, most significant number, 27% of the divorce took place among the couples who had lived for less than 4 years. And the next high risk group is, according to this table in 2010, 20 plus, right? 23.8%. Okay, here this is the most 27%. 0 to 4 years. Among the total divorces, the couples who has lived less than 4 years, their share was 27%. And the next high risk group was 20 plus, 23.8%. They were, in 2010, only 14.2%, right? They were actually the least dangerous group in terms of the divorce in 2000, whereas they became quite significant. Number 2 in terms of the possibility of getting divorced in 2010. Okay, and I think this throws a lot of questions. Okay, let me can throw a lot of questions. Let me just start with one simple question. The most important finding here from this table is that consistently 0 to 4 years. 0 to 4 years. Okay, 0 to 4 years. Yeah. Okay. 0 to 4 years. Yeah. Yeah, 0 to 4 years. This is the consistently, even though the percentage has decreased from 29.3 to 27%, but consistently this is the group which has the highest divorce risk, if you will, the possibility of getting divorced. Okay, why is that? Why 0 to 4 is the couples who have lived less than 4 years have high probability of getting divorced. 여기 뭐라고 이제 막 강하게 얘기를 하네요.
Maybe they don't have children.
Yes, the baby is a child is a very important factor, right? As all of us know that well, if you had a baby, then that kind of, well, maybe you should kind of rethink. But if you don't have a baby, well, it's just each individual's decision. Yeah, maybe we're not fit for each other. Let's stop here before it's too late, before we get a baby or something like that. So that's, so in almost, I would say all culture, 0 to 4 years is the most, I mean, that's when, you know, like they were actually quite free in a sense, because they don't have this, you know, important factor of children. Okay, okay. The baby or child or children is a very important factor. Less likely to have a child, so it's more likely that you can be freely choose to like have a divorce. What else? The number of factors, right? You get married and then like what else? Okay, yeah. Have you been married?
Yes. No, I'm kidding. I was just guessing maybe because I guess some people get married without thinking of it enough. And then I think especially in the first year maybe, or the first 2 or 3 years, they might see that, oh, well, wait, this was maybe like a mistake, and then they're going to split up. But I think if they pass the 5 years or even 4 years, they must have found out that they can stay together for a longer time, I think.
That's all similar in all cultures, right? I mean, it's I mean, two adults like living a very different life for 20, 25, 30 years, and it's not easy to like for these couple to live together. It's a very different issue. Like maybe dating is a very different issue from like getting married and living together, and then they will find out that it's like, so maybe cultural difference. The old views different, and all kind of difference will become quite starking when they live together for the first few years, and they say, well, maybe this is kind of adjusting period for couple, right? So when they could adjust to each other and they could like continue, then they would go on for 5, 10 years. But if they think, well, we're not really, it's like we're so different, maybe we should finish it now. It probably is better. So that happens during the first 4 years. And okay, what else? Let's assume that you are married. You don't have a child, and you find that your partner is not really what you had thought before. And then what else? Okay. So the younger, the better, the more chance.
I don't know. I was just thinking this, yeah, because they're still very young. They still can find a partner easily. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You're young, and like you could try it again and again, and maybe you could find the right person. Yeah. Okay. Maybe less less burdensome. Okay, younger, more maybe more decisive in terms of no, let's break up and have another one. Yeah. There's another very important factor that is when I begun my discussion of divorce, I asked this question: what is the most important factor for the divorce rate, increase of divorce rate? And that's women's economic resource. And it's more likely if you are like you lived less than 4 years, it's more likely the female still has a job. It all relates. If you are married longer, then you might have, it's more likely that you might have a child or children. And also, that means that it's more likely that you might have, the females has quit the job. Okay? So that means that within 4 years, yes, you get married, but still you don't want, yet you don't have a baby, and you still are working. That means that you have this economic freedom to choose. Well, after 5, maybe 10 years, if you had children, if you had quit your job, well, it could be quite difficult. Well, what can I do if I get divorced? But if you are still working, which means that within 4 years you're still, there's more likelihood that she is working, and then she could actually say, well, no. In terms of divorce, the female's role, if you will, is more important than males, and it's often the females. The factor is always more important in modern marriage system. So that's another factor. That's another factor for this high risk of the divorce in the 0 to 4 years. Now let's turn to this 20 plus couples. 20 plus couples. Again, the fact is that in 2000, their share for the divorce was the lowest, 14.2%. But in 2010, their share was ranked number 2, and almost 24% out of the total divorce took place in 2010. This is same data, but it gives a clear view of the trend. Okay, so on the very left, 2000, in year 2000, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10, 14, 15, 19, and 20, the rank on the very left, right? The dark blue, thick blue is 20 plus, was ranked the lowest, right? Right? Students in China? Hi, Fudan, right? You follow me? Okay, thank you. All right, great. Okay, whereas, just follow this dark, thick blue line. By 2010, it's 20 plus years, right? Has become the number 2. Number 2. I mean, this is a very, very significant change. Significant change. Why? Why there has been such an increase of divorce or divorce rates among these more mature couples, the couples who has lived more than 20 years, more than 20 years. Any guess? Okay, yeah, Stanley, yes. Yeah.
Suppose the couple get married at about 20, and 20 years later, the male is about 40, or they are both about 40 or 50. But a male seem to be more powerful than women at this age, and they have strong, they still have strong demand for some sexual communication. but 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 female tend not to provide this demand. So in the early year, the male choose to tolerate, but with the open of sexual opinion, they can choose to divorce.
Okay, so you mean that the males? It's the males, right? You said the males. Is that? I mean, can you elaborate a little bit? Yes. I thought I understood, but maybe I didn't. Okay. Please elaborate a little bit, maybe in a different way. Yeah.
他说什么？我不会啊。Sorry, I can't.
Yes, you can. Yeah. Yeah, I was following you. Yes. Go ahead. Yeah. Just try it one more time. Yeah.
Imbalance appear between male and female in 40s and 50s.
Sexually.
To satisfy such imbalance, male abandon female.
So male abandon female. Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of very interesting explanation. I guess that's what happens in China. Like male abandon female when they get older, 50 years old, they look for a younger woman. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's an interesting comparative case. So in China, maybe when males get older, and if he's not really happy with his older wife, he would look for some younger woman, and so they get divorced. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So, but Korea is different case, I think. That's cultural difference. I think in Korea, females get unhappy with their males. Yes. So females actually abandon the males, not the males. Okay. Why? Well, yes, I think your approach is very interesting. I mean, very important. She started with the age of marriage, and then kind of like trace that to like the today. Yes, Korean males and females, they get married at the age of 25, maybe, right? 25, 27, right? And then what happens? They live together, right, for 20 plus, and so they become 50 years old, maybe 55. And what happens actually? Many things happens over time. Number one, I mean, this is not really scientifically proven explanation. I have to should like footnote. Okay, so this is kind of my hypothetical, kind of theoretical explanation of this phenomenon. Number one, many experts say that, well, Korean males were very important. They played a very important function of earning money. Okay, this is kind of adoption of Japanese explanation. Many Japanese, they call it 황혼이혼, or twilight divorce. That is, at the end of their career or life, they get divorced, okay? And that often corresponds to the age of male retiring from their job. 50, 55, and so on. And I think in Korean society, the family is a very well organized organized system, where there's a great division of labor. So males should go out on money, earn money as much as they can, right? And the money is channeled to his wife. And the wife or the mother is a very important, they call it educational manager. They have this term, educational manager, which organize all kind of like private tutoring and hagwon and also everything for their children to get the best education. So there's kind of division of labor. And often, well, not every family, but this is kind of like one way of kind of simplified explanation for this Korean family system. So if the couples were really working together, this is not really very efficient for providing good education for the children, so to speak. But anyway, so this male, when he retires, his function, his role as a bread earner, money earner, is ceased, right? So, I mean, from the family's perspective, there's no use. I mean, the role of the father or male has ended. So from the family's perspective or wife's perspective, well, goodbye. I mean, you had done your and then because in many cases, many mothers, usually it's the mother. I mean, my mother used to like, my father earns money and my mother kind of runs the money and then invests the money and saves the money and so on. And then the financial resources are always really kind of managed by my mother. Like, and my father used to get some allowance monthly from my mother. And I think the same happens to me as well. I earn money and then kind of a little bit of money, allowance money is given to me. And then a lot of major portion of my money goes to, our money goes to the children's education, I think. But this kind of system has been going on. And I think when the male stops earning money, the very meaning of his existence is kind of like eliminated. And so just, well, you know, you have done your job and then maybe there's no use for our family. So that's one factor, they say, that that contributes to this high divorce rate of the older couples, and this is called twilight divorce. And in Japan, this correspondence between the retiring age and divorce age is quite important, significant. Well, another factor is children. Okay. You cannot really say that the couples have lived together for more than 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. I mean, the couples might have lived together for many years, many tens of years, 20 years, but that doesn't mean that they were very happy. They kind of have delayed or postponed their marriage, divorce, until either the child or children enter the college, or the children get married. Because, well, this is kind of like becoming less so, but it is regarded as the responsibility of the parents to have their children get married. So I know some cases when the male, this case it was male. He kind of decided to kind of maintain their legal marriage status because he doesn't want his daughter to be the daughter of a divorcee, especially before he walks in with his daughter for the wedding, right? So he said, well, I'm really unhappy with my marriage, but as a father, I would like to, in the wedding ceremony, the father would just walk together with his daughter in the kind of modern wedding system in Korea, wedding ceremony in Korea, and so he doesn't want like his daughter to have kind of certain stigma of being a daughter of like, because when you get married, as we have seen, you have this legal material, family relationship registration, and if the daughter, I mean the female is the daughter of the divorcee, I mean if her parents were divorced, the in-laws, the parents-in-laws would know that the daughter is the daughter of divorced couple. So he thinks that, well, in reality, in real terms, it's not really a relationship, but he wants to kind of maintain the legal marriage until his daughter is being married. So that kind of, so this is, I think this happens not just to the father or male, but also to the female's mother. They would say, well, yeah, I'm not really happy with this marriage, but I would kind of sacrifice or delay until either my children get into college, because getting into college is very important, and if they get divorced, that could be a very disaster for the children, or maybe delay until their children get married. So that kind of like delays the wedding, and then if the child get into college or if the child get married, and then they don't have the obstacle for their decision to getting divorced. That's another very important factor for this divorce. And in most cases, it's the females. And it's the females who have been very unhappy for 20, 30, 40 years. So you see in the newspapers, you find this article who have been married for 50 years. And suddenly, one day, the female yes, suddenly, one day, the couple have been living together for maybe 50 years, right? And suddenly, one day, the wife said, I want divorce. And the husband, very perplexed, because he thought that he was having a happy 50 years of marriage, right? The wife has been unhappy, but it's been going on for many tens of years, and then she would say, well, I want my new life, I want a second chance. And another factor is that, so this longer life expectancy and more equal gender relationships, so this older generation began to kind of have been re-educated, if you will. They began, especially among the older couples, that is like couples who have been lived for 50 years, 60 years, who have been married under this like Confucius culture, and very male-dominant marriage relationships. They live many years, and then the females have been kind of re-socialized with more democratic modern culture, whereas the males, for 50 years, he was still living under the influence of more Confucius male-oriented culture. And this kind of hierarchical relationship has been going on for 50 years. Male was very happy, like there's no problem with my marriage and so on. But female was really unhappy, and then she began to kind of like learn through the medias and conversation with her daughters and children and so on. And she realized that this is not really a fair, a good marriage, and I want my new life again. And then, so she decided. So it's the females who actually file a divorce, especially at the quite later stages of their marriage. So Stanley, in Korea, it's the females who abandon the males. It's the females who said, I don't want this relationship anymore, unlike in China, okay? Okay, so, yes, there has been many divorces, and especially among this younger, 0 to 4 years, and also 20 plus years. And as for the reasons for divorce, difference in personality, it's still, this very important factor, this interpersonal relationship. Financial problems, which has become quite important, especially you see some increase of a divorce rate after 1998 financial crisis and 2008 financial crisis. But there has been some contradictory explanation. That is, when the economy is bad, divorce rates goes up. But sometimes, actually, I think as for 2008, as economy becomes bad, they hold on to the family more. So there's some contradictory research that has been done. So it's not very simple, I think, to say that if the economy is bad, we'll get more divorce. But at each family level, I think financial problem, for example, male losing job, if one gets fired, and then their income has been kind of decreased, and then they have difficulty, and then they said, well, this is going to lead to this, family struggle, and then lead to the divorce. Cheating by the spouse, marital discord, abuse by spouse, and so on. So the major factor is difference in personality, and also financial problem. The relationship is very important, I guess. Yeah. Just to support what I have said, in the same boat, yes, okay, I'm satisfied with my spouse. The male said, well, more than 73% said, yes, I'm very happy with marriage, my wife, but much less so with the wives, 64.9% as well. So there is a gap in terms of appreciation of their marriage relations. We share similar value, well, not as significant, but still, husbands still think more positively about their relationship. So the way that men and female perceive their marital situation is quite different, and it's always the females who think less positively of their marriage, and then which can be an important factor when the family is in crisis in the later stages of their marriage. Okay, let me stop there. Okay, thank you. Thank you for comments, Stanley. Very interesting comments. Okay, all right. Bye bye. 再见. Bye bye. Yes. Okay.